My name is Kitty Williams, and at 30 years old, I thought I understood what family meant. Growing up with wealthy parents who owned Boston's largest real estate empire taught me appearances matter most. The day I married Jake, my parents never showed. When I called, their words cut deeper than any knife could. Enjoy marrying your plumber. We won't be embarrassed with you. They had no idea what was coming. The photo I sent afterward had them calling nonstop in panic. Before I reveal what that photo showed, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe to catch the rest of this story. I grew up in what most would consider a dream. Our family mansion sat on 3 acres in Beacon Hill, one of Boston's most prestigious neighborhoods. My father, Richard Williams, and my mother, Eleanor, built Williams Property Development from nothing into a company valued at over $200 million. From the outside, we had everything. Inside those perfectly decorated walls was a different story. From my earliest memories, I never felt like I was enough. My sister Sophia, 2 years younger than me, somehow embodied everything my parents valued. She was naturally graceful, socially adept, and seemed to intuitively understand the unspoken rules of high society. "Kitty, why can't you sit properly like your sister?" My mother would say during our elaborate dinner parties. "Look at how Sophia speaks to Mr. Johnson. That's how you build connections." I tried. God knows I tried. In 3rd grade, I brought home a report card with straight 2 as proudly placing it on my father's desk in his home office. "Good job," he said without looking up from his computer. When Sophia brought home B's and C's that same year, they took her out for ice cream and bought her a new dress because she tried her best. The pattern continued throughout our childhood. For my 16th birthday, I received a card with $50 inside. 3 months later, when Sophia turned 16, they surprised her with a brand new BMW convertible in our circular driveway, complete with a giant red bow. "Your sister is more social," my mother explained when she saw my face. "She needs a car to visit her friends. You just go to the library anyway." She was right. I did go to the library. I loved learning and found comfort in books rather than the shallow social gatherings my parents forced us to attend. My academic achievements continued through high school. I graduated as valedictorian with a full scholarship to Boston University. My parents attended the ceremony, but left early for a charity gala. "We've already heard your speech during practice," my father said, checking his watch. "And the Williams Foundation is presenting a large donation tonight." College brought a new level of disparity. Though we were wealthy, my parents insisted I take out student loans and work part-time. "It builds character." My father said, "You need to understand the value of money." Meanwhile, Sophia attended NYU with a fully funded daddy account that covered not just tuition and housing, but also shopping sprees, spring break trips to Cancun, and a luxury apartment in Manhattan. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore while maintaining a 4.0 GPA in economics. When I needed a new laptop after mine died, I saved for 3 months. When Sophia mentioned needing one during a family dinner call, my father ordered the latest Apple model that night with all the upgrades. "Your sister is studying fashion marketing," my mother said when I questioned the difference. "She needs a powerful computer for her design work." By my senior year, I had accepted that nothing I did would ever measure up in their eyes. So, I stopped trying to please them. I focused on building my own life on my terms. I graduated summa cum laude, found a position at a mid-size financial consulting firm, and rented my own apartment in Cambridge. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every dish, every decoration represented my hard work and my choices. For the first time, I felt proud of my life without seeking validation from my parents. They seemed almost relieved by my independence. Our interactions became less frequent and more superficial. Sunday dinners dwindled to monthly obligations, then to holiday appearances where I would sit quietly while everyone fawned over Sophia's latest accomplishment or boyfriend. "Kitty is doing fine," my mother would say when relatives asked about me. "She has a nice, steady job, very responsible." The subtext was clear: boring, unambitious, disappointing, but I had stopped caring. My worth wasn't determined by their approval anymore. I was building my own definition of success, one that valued integrity, hard work, and genuine connections over status and appearances. I was 30 years old, financially independent, respected in my field, and finally comfortable in my own skin. I had good friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. I had a cozy home that reflected my personality. I had built a life I was proud of. And then on a rainy Tuesday in April, my bathroom pipe burst, flooding my apartment and bringing Jake Wilson into my life. I called the emergency plumber number in a panic, watching as water soaked through my bathroom floor and began seeping into my bedroom carpet. The dispatcher promised someone would arrive within an hour. 53 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find a tall man with kind brown eyes and a warm smile. He was wearing work boots and jeans with a navy blue polo shirt that had Wilson Plumbing embroidered on the chest. His hands were calloused but clean, and he carried a large toolbox. "Hi, I'm Jake. Heard you've got a bit of a water situation." His voice was deep and reassuring with just a hint of a Boston accent. Despite my apartment crisis, I found myself noticing how his eyes crinkled when he smiled. Jake assessed the situation quickly and professionally shutting off the water main and getting to work. As he fixed the burst pipe, we started talking. He wasn't what I expected from an emergency plumber. He was articulate, thoughtful, and surprisingly funny. "So, what do you do when you're not dealing with indoor swimming pools?" he asked as he worked. I told him about my job in financial consulting, and instead of glazing over like most people did, he asked intelligent questions about market trends and economic indicators. We somehow shifted to books, and I discovered he was currently reading the same historical biography I had just finished. By the time he completed the repairs 3 hours later, I felt like I'd met someone special. When he handed me his card and said, "Call me if you have any more plumbing emergencies," or, if you want to continue our conversation about 19th century literature, I found myself smiling. Our first official date was the following Saturday. We met at a small coffee shop halfway between our neighborhoods. What was supposed to be a quick coffee turned into a 4-hour conversation that flowed effortlessly. Jake was unlike anyone I'd ever dated. He was completely present, genuinely interested in my thoughts, and refreshingly authentic. Over the next few months, we went on simple but meaningful dates. We explored bookstores, visited museums, took walks along the Charles River, and cooked dinner together. I learned that Jake read voraciously, played chess at a competitive level, and volunteered teaching basic home repair skills to teenagers in underserved communities. When Jake first came to my apartment for dinner, I noticed him examining my bookshelf with genuine interest. "You have excellent taste," he said, pulling out a volume on economic theory that most people wouldn't recognize. Schumpeter's theories on creative destruction are fascinating, especially when applied to modern tech disruption. I stood frozen wooden spoon in hand. "You've read Schumpeter?" Jake grinned. "Is that surprising?" It was and it wasn't. By then, I knew Jake was intelligent and curious, but his knowledge was deeper and broader than I'd expected. That night, I realized I was falling in love with him. After 3 months of dating, I decided to introduce Jake to my parents. We were attending one of their obligatory family dinners, and though I was nervous, I hoped they would see what I saw in him. I was wrong. The moment I introduced Jake as a plumber, my father's smile became fixed and wooden. My mother's eyebrows rose fractionally before she composed her features. "How interesting," she said, her voice dripping with forced politeness. "And how did you two meet?" When I explained about the burst pipe, my mother exchanged a look with my father that spoke volumes. Throughout dinner, they directed minimal conversation toward Jake, focusing instead on Sophia's latest achievements in her fashion marketing career and her new boyfriend, Bradley, whose family owned a chain of luxury hotels. Jake remained polite and engaged despite their coldness. He asked thoughtful questions about my father's business and complimented my mother on the house. His calm confidence never wavered, even when my father cut him off mid-sentence to ask Sophia about her recent trip to Paris. In the car afterward, I apologized profusely. "I'm so sorry, Jake. They were incredibly rude." Jake took my hand. "Kitty, you never have to apologize for other people's behavior, not even your parents." The next morning, my mother called. "Kitty, darling, you know we want you to be happy," she began, her voice honeyed with false concern. "But a plumber, really, what kind of future can he provide? What will we tell our friends?" "Mom, Jake is intelligent, kind, and hardworking. He owns his own business, and he makes me happy. That's all that should matter." She sighed dramatically. "You've always been stubborn. Just think about what you're doing. You could do so much better." My father was more direct when he called later that week. "This is just a phase," he said dismissively. "When you're ready to be serious about your future, let us know. We have several associates with sons who would be much more suitable." Each subsequent family gathering followed the same pattern. Jake was either ignored or subjected to subtle digs about his education and profession. My mother would pointedly discuss Sophia's boyfriend Bradley and his Harvard MBA. My father would talk about his golf games with CEOs and politicians while looking through Jake as if he were invisible. Through it all, Jake remained unruffled. He never tried to impress them or pretend to be someone he wasn't. He simply continued to be the thoughtful, intelligent man I was falling deeper in love with every day. 6 months into our relationship, Sophia and my parents organized a weekend at our family's Cape Cod house. Against my better judgment, I agreed to bring Jake. The weekend was a parade of microaggressions. My mother accidentally set only 5 places at a 6-person table. My father discussed investment strategies, deliberately using jargon and inside references that excluded Jake. Sophia and Bradley openly discussed which European cities had the best shopping with pointed remarks about the importance of being well-raveled. That night, as Jake and I walked along the beach, I finally broke down. "I'm sorry they're so horrible. I don't know why they can't see how amazing you are." Jake pulled me close. "They see me exactly as they want to see me. It has nothing to do with who I actually am." There was something in his voice that made me look up. "What do you mean?" Jake smiled mysteriously. "I have something to show you when we get back to Boston. Something I think might surprise you." The following weekend, Jake invited me to his apartment for the first time. He lived in a modest but well-maintained building in Somerville. His apartment was neat and surprisingly spacious, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with everything from classical literature to advanced engineering texts. While Jake prepared dinner in the kitchen, I wandered around looking at his book collection. On his desk, I noticed several technical journals and sketches of what looked like complex plumbing systems, but with unusual components I didn't recognize. "Finding anything interesting?" Jake asked, coming up behind me with 2 glasses of wine. "These diagrams," I said, pointing to the sketches. "They look really advanced for standard plumbing." Jake smiled, a hint of nervousness in his expression. "That's because they're not standard plumbing. They're designs for a water conservation system I've been developing." He set down the wine glasses and pulled out a chair for me. "I haven't been completely honest with you, Kitty. Or rather, I haven't told you the whole story." My heart raced as Jake took a deep breath. "I didn't start out as a plumber. I have a degree in electrical engineering from MIT. I worked for 6 years at Talbot Technologies as a senior systems engineer." I stared at him, trying to process this information. "You're an engineer, but why are you working as a plumber?" Jake smiled woefully. "The short version, burnout and purpose. I was designing components for military applications, working 80-hour weeks, and feeling increasingly disconnected from any real impact. When my father got sick 4 years ago, I took a leave of absence to help with his plumbing business. And something unexpected happened." He leaned forward, his eyes lighting up. "I discovered I loved the hands-on work. I loved solving immediate problems for real people. I loved not being chained to a desk. After my father recovered, I decided not to go back to Talbot. I took over his business instead." Jake stood and walked to a cabinet, pulling out a folder, "But I never stopped being an engineer. For the past 3 years, I've been developing this." He handed me the folder, which contained patents and technical specifications for something called the Aqualogic system. "It's a smart water conservation system for residential use," Jake explained. "It reduces household water consumption by up to 60% without changing user behavior. I've been testing prototypes in some of my clients' homes, refining the design based on real-world use." I looked up from the papers, stunned. "Jake, this is incredible, but why keep it a secret?" He sat back down, taking my hands in his. "I wanted to prove the concept worked before seeking investors. And honestly, I've enjoyed being underestimated. People see plumber and make assumptions. They don't see the MIT graduate or the entrepreneur." His eyes met me as serious now, including your parents. My mind was racing. "So, all this time, I've been running a plumbing business while developing a technology that could change how residential water systems function. I secured a patent last month, and I'm in talks with 3 venture capital firms interested in funding mass production." I thought about how my parents had treated Jake, the dismissive glances, the condescending remarks, all while having no idea who he really was. "Why didn't you tell them? Or me?" I asked quietly. Jake squeezed my hands. "You fell in love with Jake the plumber, not Jake the MIT engineer or Jake the potential tech entrepreneur." That meant everything to me. Tears welled in my eyes as I understood what he was saying. Unlike my parents, I had valued Jake for who he was, not what he did or how much money he might make. "As for your parents," he continued, I wanted them to accept me for who I am, not what I've accomplished. I didn't want to play into their value system that judges people based on credentials and bank accounts. 2 weeks later, Jake took me to a small botanical garden where we'd had one of our first dates. As we walked among the spring blooms, he suddenly stopped and turned to me. "Kitty, meeting you changed everything for me. You saw me for who I am, not what I do or what I own. You loved me without conditions or expectations." He knelt down on one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. "I want to spend my life with someone who values character over credentials, kindness over status, and love over appearances. Will you marry me?" The ring was simple but beautiful, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. Later, Jake told me he had designed it himself and had it custom made by a local jeweler. "Yes," I said through tears of joy. "Yes, I will marry you." That night, as we celebrated with champagne, I asked Jake if we should tell my parents about his background before the wedding. He thought for a moment. "I think we should give them one more chance to accept us for who we are. If they can't support our marriage without knowing about my education or business prospects, then maybe they don't deserve to know." I agreed, hoping against hope that my parents would finally see beyond their narrow definitions of success and worth. "We'll have a simple wedding," I said. "Something that reflects us, not what others expect." Jake smiled. "Perfect. Just like you." The day after our engagement, I called my parents to share the news. My mother answered on the third ring. "Hello, darling. How are you?" "I'm wonderful, Mom. I have exciting news." Jake proposed and I said, "Yes." The silence on the other end lasted so long, I thought the call had dropped. "Mom, are you there?" "Yes, I'm here," she finally said, her voice noticeably cooler. "That's quite a surprise. Have you really thought this through?" No congratulations, no excitement, just immediate doubt. "Yes, Mom. I've thought it through. I love Jake, and we want to get married." "Well," she said with a sigh, "I suppose you need to make your own decisions. Your father and I just want what's best for you." The implication was clear. Jake wasn't what they considered best for me. Before I could respond, my mother quickly changed the subject. "Oh, did Sophia call you? Bradley proposed last weekend. They're planning a June wedding at the Fairmont. Isn't that wonderful?" My sister and Bradley had been dating for 8 months, 2 months less than Jake and me. But of course, their engagement warranted celebration, while mine warranted concern. "That's great, Mom. I'm happy for them. You should call your sister. She's so excited." Bradley gave her a 4-carat diamond. "It's absolutely stunning." I ended the call, feeling deflated. What should have been one of the happiest moments of my life had been dismissed and overshadowed in less than 5 minutes. Over the next few months, the contrast in how our respective engagements were treated became increasingly obvious and painful. My parents threw an elaborate engagement party for Sophia and Bradley at their country club. 200 guests, champagne fountains, a string quartet, and professional photographers ensured the event would be featured in Boston's social pages. Jake and I received no such celebration. When I asked my mother if they were planning anything for us, she looked uncomfortable. "Well, darling, we thought you might prefer something more low-key given Jake's situation." Jake's situation being that he was a plumber, at least as far as they knew. "Actually, Mom, a celebration would be nice. Nothing extravagant, just family and close friends." She patted my hand. "Let me talk to your father. Our schedule is quite full with Sophia's wedding planning." Unsurprisingly, that conversation never led anywhere. Instead, all family gatherings became centered around Sophia's upcoming nuptials. Sunday dinners transformed into wedding planning sessions. My mother and Sophia discussed flower arrangements, menu options, and seating charts. While I sat silently, my own engagement completely ignored. When I mentioned our own wedding plans, my mother would nod distractedly. "That's nice, dear. Now Sophia, about the bridesmaids' dresses." The most painful moment came during a family dinner when my father announced he had set aside $300,000 for Sophia's wedding. "Only the best for my little girl," he said, raising his glass in a toast. I sat frozen, remembering how my parents had reacted when I told them Jake and I were planning a small garden ceremony followed by a reception at a local restaurant. "Well, that sounds economical," my mother had said with a tight smile. "I suppose it suits your circumstances." No offer of financial help, no offer to assist with planning, not even an offer to review our guest list. As Sophia's wedding approached, I was included in the bridal party as a bridesmaid, but felt more like a prop than a sister. At the bridal shower, which cost more than our entire wedding budget, my mother introduced me to her friends. This is Kitty Sophia's sister. She works in finance and is also engaged. No mention of Jake. No excitement about my upcoming wedding. One of my mother's friends, after several glasses of champagne, was less subtle. I heard you're marrying a handyman or something. How non-traditional of you. The final straw came during Sophia's wedding weekend. The rehearsal dinner was held at an exclusive restaurant overlooking Boston Harbor. As family members gave toasts celebrating the couple, my father stood and raised his glass. Tomorrow, my beautiful daughter marries the man of her dreams, a man with ambition, education, and the right connections to succeed. Bradley, you are exactly the kind of son-in-law we always hoped for. His eyes briefly flicked to me and Jake before returning to the happy couple. The message couldn't have been clearer. The wedding itself was a spectacle of excess. Sophia's dress cost $20,000. The flowers alone were worth more than my car. 500 guests witnessed their vows at Boston's historic Old North Church, followed by a reception at the Fairmont that featured a 10-piece band, gourmet 5-course meal, and a fireworks display over the harbor. Throughout it all, Jake remained gracious and supportive, even when relatives pointedly asked him about unclogging toilets for a living, or whether he had always aspired to be a plumber. On the drive home, I finally broke down. I'm so sorry you had to endure that. They're being horrible. Jake took my hand. Kitty, I don't care what they think of me. I only care that they're hurting you. We don't need their approval or their money. Our wedding will be perfect because it will be about us and our love, not about impressing people or maintaining social status. I wiped my tears and nodded. You're right, and I can't wait to marry you, whether my parents approve or not. 2 weeks later, I called my parents to formally invite them to our wedding, which was scheduled for the following month. My father answered his voice, distracted. Kitty, I'm heading into a meeting. Can this wait? It will just take a minute, Dad. I wanted to officially invite you and Mom to our wedding. It's on Saturday, August 12th at Riverside Gardens. The ceremony starts at 4 o'clock. His sigh was audible. August 12th. Let me check my calendar. I heard papers shuffling. We have the charity gala for the Children's Hospital that evening. It's been on our calendar for months. The ceremony is at 4 o'clock. Dad, the gala doesn't start until 7. You could attend both. Another sigh. I'll talk to your mother and get back to you. He never did. When I called again a week later, my mother made vague excuses about scheduling conflicts and promised to try their best to attend. As our wedding day approached, I held on to a sliver of hope that they would show up, that they would finally put their love for me above their social prejudices. Despite everything, they were still my parents, and I wanted them to be part of the most important day of my life. The day before the wedding, I called one last time. Mom, I just wanted to confirm that you and Dad will be there tomorrow. Oh, Kitty, she said, her voice artificially regretful. Your father has that important meeting with investors from Dubai. We really cannot miss it. I'm sure your wedding will be lovely, though. The lie was transparent. There was no meeting. They simply couldn't bear to watch their daughter marry someone they deemed beneath their social standing. I see, I said, my voice hollow. Well, if you change your minds, you know where we'll be. I hung up a strange calm, replacing the hurt. I had given them every chance, and they had made their choice. Now I would make mine. My wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. Jake and I had chosen Riverside Gardens, a small botanical garden on the Charles River for its natural beauty and intimate setting. We had planned everything ourselves, from the simple floral arrangements to the playlist for the reception. The garden pavilion was transformed with white fairy lights, wild flowers in mason jars, and gauzy fabric draped from the wooden beams. It wasn't extravagant, but it was exactly what we wanted. As my best friend Lisa helped me into my dress, a simple ivory gown with delicate lace details, I tried not to think about my parents' empty seats in the front row. You look beautiful, Lisa said, adjusting my veil. Are you okay? I nodded, forcing a smile. I'm marrying the love of my life today. That's all that matters. But as the clock ticked closer to 4, I found myself glancing repeatedly at my phone. Hoping for a message saying they were on their way, nothing came. At 3:45, I couldn't help myself. I called my mother's cell phone. It rang several times before she answered. Kitty, what is it? Mom, the ceremony starts in 15 minutes. Are you and Dad coming? There was a pause, then my mother's voice, cold and detached. Kitty, we've been through this. Your father and I have other commitments today. But it's my wedding day, I whispered, tears threatening to spill. And it was your choice to marry him. Her voice dripped with disdain. Enjoy marrying your plumber. We won't be embarrassed with you." The call ended abruptly. I stared at the phone in my hand, her words echoing in my head. Not just disappointment or disapproval, but active embarrassment. As if my choice of husband reflected poorly on them. As if love were less important than social standing. I sat down heavily on a chair, tears now flowing freely. Lisa rushed to my side. "They're not coming." I managed between sobs. "They're too embarrassed to see me marry a plumber." Lisa hugged me tightly. "Then they don't deserve to be here. Today is about you and Jake, not about them." There was a gentle knock at the door and Jake's voice called, "Kitty, is everything okay?" Traditionally, the groom shouldn't see the bride before the ceremony, but at that moment, I needed him more than I needed tradition. "Come in," I called. Jake entered looking handsome in his navy suit. When he saw my tears, he was immediately at my side, kneeling before me. "What happened?" Through tears, I explained my parents' final rejection. Jake listened, his expression moving from concern to anger to resolve. "Kitty, look at me," he said gently, taking my hands in his. "Your parents have made their choice, and it's their loss. They will miss seeing their amazing daughter marry someone who loves her completely. They will miss the beginning of our life together. And someday they will regret it." He wiped a tear from my cheek. "But today isn't about them. It's about us. About the life we're choosing to build together. So the question is, do you still want to marry me today with or without your parents' blessing?" Looking into his eyes, I found my answer. "Yes, more than anything," Jake smiled. "Then let's not give them the power to ruin our day." He was right. I had spent too many years seeking my parents' approval, measuring my worth by their standards. Today marked the beginning of a new chapter 1, where I defined success and happiness on my own terms. I dabbed at my eyes and stood up. "Lisa, can you help fix my makeup? I have a wedding to get to." As I prepared to walk down the aisle, my uncle, Henry, my father's brother, and the only family member who had always treated me with unconditional love, approached me. "Your father called me," he said quietly. "Told me weren't coming, and asked if I would check on you." I braced myself for more disappointment, but Uncle Henry surprised me. "I told him he was making the biggest mistake of his life," he continued. "And then I asked if you'd do me the honor of letting me walk you down the aisle." Fresh tears, but this time of gratitude filled my eyes. "I would love that, Uncle Henry." "Your Jake is a good man," he said as he offered his arm. Anyone who takes the time to know him can see that the ceremony was everything I had hoped for. Jake's eyes when he saw me walking down the aisle, the personal vows we had written, the intimate gathering of friends who truly cared about us all, combined to create a moment of perfect joy. During the reception, I found myself actually grateful for my parents' absence. There was no tension, no awkward conversations, no subtle disapproval casting a shadow over our celebration. Instead, there was laughter, dancing, heartfelt toasts, and genuine warmth. Jake's parents, a kind, retired couple who had driven up from Rhode Island, embraced me like a daughter. His father, the original founder of Wilson Plumbing, beamed with pride as he watched his son dance with his new wife. "He's never been happier than he is with you," Mrs. Wilson told me as we shared a quiet moment. That's all any parent should want for their child. As Jake and I danced our first dance as husband and wife, I realized that I felt lighter, freer than I had in years. The weight of trying to earn my parents' approval had finally lifted. "No regrets," Jake whispered as he held me close. I looked up at him, at the man who loved me for exactly who I was, who had never tried to change me or make me feel less than, not a single one. Later that night, as we prepared to leave for our honeymoon, a simple weekend at a lakeside cabin in Vermont, I had a sudden inspiration. Taking out my phone, I found a photo that had been taken earlier of Jake speaking with some of his MIT colleagues who had attended the wedding. In the background was a banner congratulating Jake Wilson, CEO of Aqualogic Systems. Without hesitation, I sent the photo to both my parents with a simple message. "Thought you might like to see a picture from the wedding you missed." Then I turned off my phone, took my husband's hand, and walked toward our future. Our honeymoon was simple but perfect. The cabin Jake had rented sat on the shores of Lake Champlain, surrounded by pine trees and wildlife. We spent our days hiking, reading on the porch, and swimming in the clear lake water. Our evenings were filled with home-cooked meals, board games, and conversation that flowed effortlessly from serious to silly and back again. It was on the third day of our honeymoon that Jake received the call. I was reading on the porch when he stepped outside, his face lit with excitement. "It's official," he said, sitting beside me. "Vertex Capital is investing $5 million in Aqualogic. We're going to full production by the end of the year. I threw my arms around him, Jake. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. He hugged me tightly. I couldn't have done it without your support. Having someone who believed in me, in the real me, made all the difference. That same afternoon, an article appeared in the Boston Business Journal's online edition. MIT engineer secures major funding for revolutionary water conservation system. The article detailed Jake's background, his education at MIT, his years at Talbot Technologies, and his vision for aqualogic systems. It quoted several industry experts hailing the technology as potentially game-changing for residential water conservation. When I turned my phone back on that evening, I wasn't surprised to find it flooded with notifications. 27 missed calls from my parents, 15 text messages increasingly urgent. Kitty, call us immediately. We need to talk about Jake. Why didn't you tell us about his background? Please call as soon as you get this. I showed the messages to Jake, who raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing on their sudden interest in me. I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to ignore them completely. Another part wanted to call and unleash years of pent-up hurt and anger. But the largest part of me simply felt sad for them for how their narrow view of success and worth had blinded them to what truly mattered. What do you want to do? Jake asked. I thought for a moment. Nothing for now. We're on our honeymoon. They can wait. We enjoyed the rest of our time at the lake, deliberately putting thoughts of my parents aside. We returned to our apartment the following Sunday, refreshed and happy, ready to begin our married life together. Monday morning brought a new wave of calls and messages from my parents. I finally texted my mother back from honeymoon. Very busy with work this week. We'll call when I have time. Her response was immediate. We'd like to take you and Jake to dinner tonight. The Harbor View at 7. It's important. I showed the message to Jake, who smiled. Riley. Well, that didn't take long. What do you think? I think I'm not ready to pretend everything is fine, I said honestly. But I'm curious what they have to say. Jake nodded. How about we invite them here instead? Home field advantage. We agreed to have my parents over to our apartment that evening. I spent the day alternating between work and anxiety, unsure how to feel about this sudden change in their attitude. At precisely 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. My parents stood in the hallway, my mother clutching a large gift bag, my father holding a bottle of expensive champagne. They looked immaculate as always, but there was an unfamiliar nervousness in their posture. Kitty, darling, my mother said, moving to embrace me. I accepted the hug stiffly, then stepped back to stand beside Jake. Please come in, I said formally, as if they were business associates rather than family. They entered our apartment, eyes darting around, taking in our modest but comfortable home. My mother handed me the gift bag. A belated wedding present, she said with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. We felt terrible about missing the ceremony. I set the bag aside without opening it. Would you like something to drink? The awkward small talk continued through drinks in our living room. My parents commented on the weather, asked about our honeymoon in vague terms, and studiously avoided any mention of the wedding they had missed or the reason for their sudden desire to see us. Finally, my father cleared his throat. Jake, we owe you an apology. We made assumptions about you that were clearly incorrect. Jake nodded but said nothing, his expression neutral. If we had known about your MIT background and your company, my mother added, we would have. What I interrupted, unable to contain myself any longer. Treated him with basic respect, attended our wedding, not been embarrassed to have him as a son-in-law. My mother had the grace to look uncomfortable. Kitty, we made a mistake. We're trying to make amends. Are you? I asked, because it sounds like you're not sorry for how you treated Jake. You're sorry you misjudged his economic potential. Those are very different things. My father straightened his tie, falling back on his business demeanor. Regardless, we'd like to move forward positively. In fact, I've been thinking that Williams Property Development could benefit from Aqualogic's technology in our new eco-friendly apartment complex. Perhaps we could discuss a partnership. Jake, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke. That's an interesting proposal, Richard. But I should mention that Aqualogic just acquired development rights for the Riverfront District project. My father's face went pale. The Riverfront District was a major redevelopment project that Williams Property Development had been trying to secure for years. It represented potentially hundreds of millions in revenue. That's unexpected, my father managed. I wasn't aware your company had diversified into real estate development. Jake smiled mildly. We're primarily focused on water conservation technology, but our investors saw an opportunity to showcase our systems in a large-scale residential project. The riverfront district was perfect for that purpose. My mother looked between Jake and my father, clearly trying to assess the business implications. "Well, perhaps that's even more reason for our families to work together," she suggested smoothly. I had heard enough. "Is that why you're here? Because you think Jake can now benefit your business?" "Of course not," my mother protested. "We're here because you're our daughter and we missed your wedding and we want to make things right." "You missed our wedding because you chose to miss it," I said quietly. "You were embarrassed by my choice of husband based solely on his occupation. You made me feel like I wasn't worthy of the same love and support you gave Sophia. And now that you've discovered Jake has credentials and success that you respect, suddenly you want to make things right." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Kitty, business and family are complicated. Sometimes they overlap in ways that aren't easy to navigate." "No, Dad. This isn't complicated. This is actually very simple. You and Mom value status, money, and appearances over character, happiness, and love. You always have. I just finally stopped expecting anything different." My mother's eyes filled with tears. Whether genuine or strategic, I couldn't tell. "Kitty, please. We made a terrible mistake. We want to be part of your lives." Jake reached for my hand, a silent show of support. I squeezed his fingers, drawing strength from his presence. "I think I said carefully that we all need some time. Jake and I are starting our life together. We're building something based on mutual respect, honesty, and unconditional support. If you want to be part of that life, you'll need to demonstrate that you understand and share those values." My parents exchanged glances, clearly not having expected this response. "What does that mean exactly?" my father asked. "It means this isn't a business negotiation," Jake said quietly. "It means you can't fix this with expensive gifts or strategic partnerships. It means you need to earn back Kitty's trust by showing genuine change." My parents left shortly afterwards, subdued and uncertain. As I closed the door behind them, I felt a curious mixture of sadness and strength. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, pulling me into a hug. I nodded against his chest. "I think so. For the first time, I feel like I stood up for myself with them without needing their approval afterward." Jake kissed the top of my head. "I'm proud of you, and whatever you decide about your relationship with them going forward, I'll support you." That night, lying in bed, I realized something important. My parents' rejection had always felt like a judgment of my worth. But now I understood their behavior reflected their limitations, not mine. I could choose to keep giving them the power to hurt me. Or I could choose to define my own value based on the life I was building and the love I both gave and received. The choice finally was clear. In the months that followed, I maintained limited contact with my parents. Our interactions were civil but distant, like acquaintances rather than family. I stopped expecting them to change overnight and instead focused on healing my own wounds. With the encouragement of Jake and my closest friends, I started seeing a therapist to work through years of conditional love and emotional neglect. Dr. Levine helped me understand that my parents' inability to love unconditionally wasn't because I was unworthy, but because of their own limitations and the values they had been raised with. "You can love your parents," she told me during one session, "without allowing their judgment to determine your self-worth." Those words became a mantra as I worked to build healthier boundaries and expectations. Meanwhile, Jake's company flourished. Aqualogic Systems launched their first production line of water conservation units, which quickly gained attention for their effectiveness and ease of installation. The Riverfront District project became a showcase for sustainable urban development, featuring aqualogic technology throughout the residential and commercial spaces. My own career advanced as well. I was promoted to senior financial consultant, managing a team of analysts and working with clients to develop sustainable investment strategies. Jake and I bought our first home, a charming colonial in Cambridge with enough space for the family we hoped to start. 6 months after our wedding, we received unexpected news. My sister Sophia called late one night, her voice shaking with suppressed tears. "Kitty, I need your help. Bradley and I are getting divorced." I sat up in bed, immediately concerned despite our complicated relationship. "What happened?" "He's been investigated for financial fraud. Apparently, he's been running a Ponzi scheme through his family's hotel chain. The FBI raided our apartment yesterday." My mind raced. Bradley had been my parents' ideal son-in-law, the perfect addition to their social circle, the man with the right credentials and connections. "Are you okay? Do you need a place to stay?" There was a pause, then a soft sob. Would you really let me stay with you after how I treated you and Jake? The truth was Sophia had been as much a product of our parents' values as I had been, just in a different way. While I had been made to feel inadequate, she had been raised to believe her worth came from social status and material success. Of course, I said, that's what family does. Sophia moved into our guest room the next day, bringing only 2 suitcases of personal belongings. Everything else had been seized as part of the investigation. My parents' reaction to the scandal was swift and harsh. They distanced themselves publicly from Bradley and pressured Sophia to complete the divorce quickly to minimize social embarrassment. What they hadn't anticipated was that Bradley had involved William's property development in several of his fraudulent schemes. As the investigation expanded, my parents found themselves facing difficult questions about their business practices and financial relationships. I never knew, Sophia confessed one evening as we sat in our kitchen. Bradley handled all our finances. I just signed whatever he put in front of me. It's not your fault, Jake assured her. Con men are good at what they do precisely because they seem trustworthy. Living with us, Sophia saw a different kind of relationship than what she had experienced with Bradley or observed between our parents. She watched as Jake and I made decisions together, supported each other's careers, and built a partnership based on mutual respect rather than social advantage. You're actually happy, she said one day, the realization seeming to surprise her. Not just Instagram happy or country club happy, actually happy. I smiled. We are. And Mom and Dad were willing to miss this because Jake was a plumber. They missed it because they couldn't see beyond their own narrow definition of success, I corrected gently. But people can change if they want it badly enough. As Sophia rebuilt her life, finding a job in marketing and eventually her own apartment, my parents faced their own reckoning. The scandal involving Bradley had damaged their reputation in Boston society. Several of their business associates distanced themselves, and they were forced to sell their Beacon Hill mansion to cover legal settlements. A year after our wedding, my father called and asked if he and my mother could visit. I agreed with cautious optimism. They arrived looking older somehow. The stress of the past year had left visible marks. My father, once imperious and commanding, seemed smaller. My mother's perfect appearance showed cracks in the foundation. We've been doing a lot of thinking. My father began after we were seated in the living room about values, about what really matters. My mother nodded. The people we thought were our friends disappeared the moment we faced difficulties. The social circle we worked so hard to maintain turned their backs on us. But you, my father, continued looking between Jake and me. You took in Sophia when she had nowhere to go, even after how poorly we treated you. That's what family does. I repeated the words I had said to Sophia. We're learning that my mother said quietly the hard way. My father cleared his throat. We were wrong about everything that matters. Wrong about Jake. Wrong about what makes a successful marriage. Wrong about what makes a successful life. We don't expect forgiveness. My mother added, we just want a chance to do better, to be the parents you deserved all along. I looked at Jake, who gave me a subtle nod of support. I can't promise that things will go back to normal, I said carefully, because the old normal wasn't healthy. But we can try to build something new, something better. The road to reconciliation was long and sometimes difficult. There were setbacks and old patterns that needed to be broken. But gradually we established a new kind of relationship, one based on genuine connection rather than expectations and judgment. My parents began therapy themselves, working to understand how their own upbringings had shaped their values and behavior. They developed a genuine appreciation for Jake, not just for his business success, but for his character and the way he loved me. 2 years after our wedding, when Jake and I announced we were expecting our first child, my parents' joy was unforced and uncomplicated. We want to be grandparents who accept and love unconditionally, my mother said, tears in her eyes. The kind of grandparents we should have been as parents. As I look back on our journey, I realized that what seemed like the worst rejection actually set me free. It forced me to define success and happiness on my own terms, to build relationships based on authentic connection rather than social advantage. Jake and I established a scholarship fund at MIT for students from working-class backgrounds who want to pursue engineering degrees. We named it after Jake's father, who had taught his son that honest work of any kind has dignity and value. My parents, in their own way, found a new purpose. They downsized their business to focus on affordable housing initiatives, working to create homes for families regardless of social status or income level. Sophia found her own path as well, starting a nonprofit that helps women recover financially after leaving fraudulent or abusive relationships. As for me, I finally understood that my worth was never determined by my parents' approval or by social status. It was always there waiting for me to recognize and claim it for myself. If you've ever felt judged for your choices or measured against someone else's standards, remember this. Sometimes the people who judge you most harshly are the ones who understand you least. Live your life according to your own values, not someone else's expectations. True happiness comes from being authentic, not from seeking external validation. Have you ever had to stand up for your choices against family pressure? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be struggling with similar situations. Thank you for listening, and remember you are worthy of love and respect exactly as you are.